I'm Elin from Mayo Clinic, and I am here with Dr. Ed Stadtmauer from UPenn and Dr. Krina Patel from MD Anderson. And we just had an excellent session on CAR-T therapy in multiple myeloma. We tried to cover really a spectrum of topics with BCMA targeting CAR-Ts that are now in late development, hoping to have something for FDA review by early 2020, as well as early investigations into next generation CAR-Ts, and also having some pharma perspective on global development of CAR-Ts. Dr. Stadtmauer, would you like to start with some of the things you presented and shared, and what are you excited about, and what are you looking forward
It's
to?
been just such a tremendous time for our patients with relapsed and refractory multiple myeloma. We've seen such tremendous results with the CAR-T cells for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and for acute lymphocytic leukemia. And now we're seeing similarly outstanding results, even for the most relapsed and refractory patients with multiple myeloma. The BCMA-directed CAR-T cells, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% or more of the patients who've received them have had beautiful responses with tolerable toxicities. These patients still have the CRS and the potential neurotoxicity, but there are many patients, in fact, we heard today that there are patients over 3 years in remission after this therapy who have really run out of other therapies. So it's an exciting time.
And Dr. Patel, would you like to share what you presented and your perspective on where we are in the field right now?
Sure. I think this weekend has been really fun just seeing what's going on in other diseases that are a little bit ahead of us, especially diffuse large B-cell lymphoma and ALL and CLL, and how diseases are so different and why the responses are so different in myeloma versus, let's say, other disease types. And I think with these early trials and hopefully having a standard of care soon is very, very exciting. But I think what we need now is the data of why are our responses different. Great, that patient who had 3 years, why did that patient have 3 years versus our patients who don't respond so well? And I think we've come up with so many questions, and hopefully now we'll start having those answers. And then I think the fact that we have other targets for myeloma, that it's not just BCMA, that now we can look at other targets, see how people respond, and then hopefully in the future potentially combine them to see if that is the way to cure. I think these are really exciting times for our patients with relapsed refractory disease, but really important is what's going to happen in the future if we can do it earlier. How are we going to cure our patients? And we're not there yet, but I do think this is sort of the window that maybe we'll be able to figure it out soon.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, as a treating physician, it's been very exciting to see these patients at the bedside. There were a lot of questions about, what do we know about the relapse? Maybe we're not quite seeing that flattening of the curve as we're seeing lymphoma and leukemia. What do you think are potential things that we could maybe learn that maybe is shared among the CAR-T platform, and what could be unique challenges, with multiple myeloma that disease specific?
I think that the mechanisms of either non-response or relapse is probably the key question in all of CAR-T cell therapy for all of our patients. Initially it was felt that probably a relapse would be a cancer cell evolves to no longer have the target on its surface, and therefore it will no longer be targetable, and therefore other targets or multiple targets is a reasonable thing to do. But we're also learning that patients can relapse even though they still have the target on the surface of their cells, and so it may be more than just having a warhead that targets these cells. It may require much more knowledge about about how to interact and how to make these cells even more potent. And that's one of the things that we've been studying, and maybe trying to edit out certain genes to make the cells either persist longer or be more potent, versus trying to really understand the environment in which these malignant cells live, and then and seeing if we can enhance the ability for these cells to persist and grow and attack the disease by combining perhaps these cells with immunomodulatory agents or checkpoint inhibitors, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think the other question is T cells. How, what is the health of these T cells that are going in? If we're making it from our patients who have had lots of therapy, those T cells are probably not as active, even though we put something in there to activate them. So then the trials that I discussed mostly was for a different antigen, CS1, which we have the monoclonal antibody, elotuzumab for, but this is putting something else on that warhead, and it's a CAR-T. So, and then our trial specifically is an allogeneic. It's one of the first, other cells, not your own, but an allogeneic product where we take normal donors and we make these CAR-T cells. So I think it's going to be really interesting, one, to see what a different antigen does, but two, what happens when you give somebody, somebody else's cells. Of course, people have probably heard of allogeneic transplant, where we think about graft versus host disease and those kinds of things where there are problems. But here we actually take out the machinery that can cause graft versus host disease. So we don't expect to see that. And we're giving something specific just to kill the myeloma, right? We're not replacing the bone marrow. So I think that the patients that are going on here mostly are patients who, I think would benefit that they can't make their own cells. So there are a lot of people out there that we've tried to get onto, the BCMA-CAR-Ts, but we couldn't make cells, or their disease is just so aggressive, they don't have time to wait for bridging and all those things. So specifically for those patients, I think this is a trial that will hopefully get this kind of new immune therapy to them. But then, once again, give us a lot of information about using your own cells versus somebody who's never seen cancer or had steroids their entire time, and seeing if those T cells work a little bit better and give us more information of what to do for the future.
And certainly now that we have evidence of effectiveness, that these cells are actually causing responses and safety, more and more we're moving these therapies into earlier circumstances, that maybe the T cells will be healthier, maybe we'll be able to sort of transfect into cells that have more memory and more effectiveness, and patients who aren't so beat up in many ways from all of their other therapies, so that they may truly benefit from these therapies.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of opportunities still coming ahead. What are you most excited about, or takeaway points from the session that we had here, maybe the iwCAR-T meeting that we've had so far?
Well, the enthusiasm of the community that's doing this work is just tremendous, and really moves us along. I think there's a lot of support, both from the academic centers as well as the clinicians, as well as our industry partners. So it's all, I think it's all set for us to really make tremendous advances in the near future.
Yeah, I agree. I think our session was probably one of the biggest in terms of the folks presenting, and we did have different countries represented, which was amazing. This is a global, thing. Someone mentioned that there's 44 myeloma CAR-T trials right now on clinicaltrials.gov, and it's in multiple countries. It's not just the U.S. It's growing, right? And I think to get that data, because not everybody's treated the same everywhere, but it seems like CAR-T could go to other countries. It's not something that has to be only in the U.S. as a boutique medicine. And to have that perspective from our pharma group, and that people are looking at that, to make this applicable to everybody and not just the certain centers, I think was actually pretty refreshing. And having multiple pharma companies involved, because it makes it more competitive. We're trying to get the best products out there, and hopefully, as we know, myeloma is one of the most expensive. This came up that myeloma is one of the most expensive diseases to treat. So if we can get better quality of life for our patients with this, that actually adds value to what we're doing. and hopefully that will help our patients in the future.
Yeah, and this is the first iwCAR-T, and we aim to have a series. And so I think next year there'll be even more exciting things to discuss, particularly in the myeloma field. Is there anything that we haven't shared yet with here that you might want people to know? So thinking ahead for next year.
Yeah, no, I think hopefully we'll have more of the resistance mechanisms a little bit more worked out. I think because we're a little bit behind, we're not as where diffuse large B cell is, and we have more issues. It's not just one issue. And so I'm hoping that by next year we have a little bit more information to help us with that part.
I certainly will stay tuned.
Well, with that, we will look forward to seeing everyone at iwCAR-T 2020.